The ongoing political debate around immigration in the United States is often framed through a binary lens. Either you're for secure borders and enforcement, or you're advocating for open borders and leniency. But this simplification ignores the deep, complex, and often contradictory economic consequences of policies that seek to implement mass deportation of undocumented immigrants. Nowhere is this more starkly illustrated than in current President Donald Trump's immigration platform, which includes aggressive mass deportation plans he claims will boost job opportunities for US-born workers, reduce crime, and revitalize the economy. Yet, the evidence overwhelmingly suggests otherwise. Economic data, real-world case studies, and historical policy reviews all point to the same reality. Mass deportation doesn't create prosperity. In fact, it threatens to upend essential sectors of the economy, spike inflation, reduce job creation, and damage the very labor market Trump's policies claim to defend. To begin with, one of the foundational myths underpinning the mass deportation argument is the assumption that removing undocumented immigrants from the workforce will result in more job opportunities for US-born citizens. This idea assumes a fixed number of jobs exist, where one worker's exit simply frees a space for another. But labor economists like Chloe East, a professor at the University of Colorado, Denver, have thoroughly debunked this logic. The labor market, East argues, is not zero-sum. It's dynamic, fluid, and driven by demand, not just headcount. Her research, along with others, closely examined past mass deportation efforts, most notably the Secure Communities policy during the Obama's administration. That program, which led to the deportation of over 400,000 undocumented individuals between 2008 and 2012, offered a grim preview of what Trump's expanded deportation strategy might yield. The results? No meaningful uptick in employment for the native-born workers. Instead, a destabilized labor force and slowed job growth. One of the central reasons for this outcome lies in the kinds of jobs undocumented immigrants typically perform. In industries like construction, agriculture, hospitality, and food service, undocumented workers fill roles that are physically demanding, low-paying, and offer little in the way of job security. These roles are not eagerly sought by native-born workers. When these positions are vacated through deportation, they're often left unfilled. The result? Business operations slow, costs increase, and in some cases, companies downsize or fold. The idea that a deportation equals a job gained for an American simply doesn't bear out in practice. Instead, a ripple effect occurs, particularly in industries where immigrant labor supports broader systems. Construction, for example, relies not only on laborers, but on foremen, engineers, architects, and supervisors. If companies can't find enough laborers, they don't need as many supervisors either. Likewise, restaurants that lose line cooks and dishwashers scale back operations, leading to layoffs for waitstaff and managers. Deporting the backbone of the workforce weakens the entire skeleton. But beyond direct labor impacts, Trump's mass deportation strategy risks triggering wide-reaching economic shocks that extend into every household, regardless of immigration status. Take inflation, for instance. Some advocates of mass deportation argue that reducing the population will ease demand and thus reduce price pressures. On paper, this seems plausible. Fewer people, less consumption, lower prices. But that theory ignores the supply side of the equation. Immigrants don't just consume, they produce. They grow the food, stock the shelves, drive the trucks, and manage supply chains. Eliminating a massive swath of the labor pool doesn't just reduce demand, it cripples supply. A concrete example? The price of groceries. Eggs, which became a high-profile inflation symbol in recent years, rely heavily on immigrant labor, from poultry farms to packaging plants to transport services. Remove those workers and production bottlenecks ensue. According to the Peterson Institute for International Economics, mass deportation could drive inflation upward by as much as 10% due to reduced labor in essential production sectors. So rather than stabilizing prices, deportations could worsen inflation. The consequences are even more visible at the state level. In North Dakota, for instance, Bloomberg's reporting highlights how immigrant labor is not just a supplement, it's a necessity. The state currently suffers from one of the worst worker shortages in the country, with only 30 workers available for every 100 open jobs. Even if every high school graduate, parolee, and unemployed adult entered the workforce today, there would still be tens of thousands of unfilled jobs. Immigration, particularly legal immigration pathways, has become a lifeline. Take Cardinal Glass, a window manufacturing company in Fargo. It employs hundreds of workers, 70% of whom are foreign-born. The company isn't hiring immigrants out of charity or politics. It's hiring them because no one else is applying. Cardinal Glass's survival depends on a consistent, reliable workforce, and that workforce is largely immigrant. Remove it and the company falters. Multiply that across every factory, restaurant, farm, and warehouse in the country, and you begin to see the looming catastrophe that mass deportation would ignite. This reality is not just limited to manufacturing. The construction industry is one of the hardest hit sectors when it comes to immigrant labor dependency. In 2022, 11.7% of all immigrant employment was in construction. Comparatively, only 6.2% of native-born workers worked in construction. Without immigrant workers, entire projects would be delayed, housing development would slow, and costs would skyrocket. A problem in a nation already suffering from a severe housing crisis. The Trump administration, and by extension many Republican lawmakers, argue that stricter enforcement deters future unauthorized immigration, but deterrence has a cost. Businesses left without a labor pool must reduce output. Prices rise, government tax revenue declines, and the economy contracts. Deportation isn't free, it's incredibly expensive. In fact, ICE estimates that it costs roughly $12,500 to apprehend, detain, and deport a single undocumented person. Multiply that by 10 million. The estimated undocumented population, and the financial burden becomes astronomical. Moreover, many undocumented immigrants are not jobless dependents or recent arrivals. They are embedded members of their communities. They pay taxes, both income and sales, and many own businesses and property. A 2017 study by the Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy found that undocumented immigrants collectively contribute more than $11 billion in state and local taxes annually. Removing them would eliminate that revenue and increase the strain on local governments already operating on tight budgets. The irony is that many of the same politicians promoting mass deportation as an economic solution also advocate for small government and lower taxes. But their own policies would necessitate vast increases in government spending to carry out deportations, while simultaneously shrinking the tax base that supports infrastructure, education, and healthcare. And then there's the human capital loss. Many immigrants, regardless of legal status, have lived in the US for decades. They've raised families here. Their children are US citizens. They've developed specialized skills and cultural fluency that make them uniquely valuable in their industries. Deporting them means starting over, with no guarantee that replacements, if any, will be as well trained or motivated. Consider this: when someone is deported, it doesn't just affect their job, it affects their landlord, their child's school, their favorite grocery store, the local tax assessor's office, and the state's GDP. The economic web of contribution is vast, and when severed abruptly, it creates a collapse. Even from a national security perspective, mass deportation carries risks. When immigrants are fearful of law enforcement, they're less likely to report crimes, cooperate with investigations, or seek medical help. This mistrust destabilizes communities and makes them less safe for everyone. Ultimately, the Bloomberg report and supporting data reveal a truth that too many politicians ignore. Immigration is not just a moral issue. It's an economic one, and in a country already grappling with worker shortages, rising costs, and strained infrastructure, policies that remove millions of productive workers are not solutions. They're time bombs. Trump's immigration policy, anchored in mass deportation, promises to protect American jobs and curb economic distress. But the evidence shows it will do the opposite. It won't create jobs. It will eliminate them. It won't lower prices. It will increase them. And it won't fix the economy. It will destabilize it. As the nation heads into another election cycle, these truths deserve more than partisan sound bites. They demand honest reckoning. Because the real cost of losing millions of immigrants isn't measured just in GDP points. It's measured in lost opportunity, shattered communities, and a country that shrinks not just in numbers, but in promise. Let us know what you think in the comments. Is mass deportation the answer to America's labor issues, or a costly mistake? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more breakdowns on how policy shapes your paycheck, your community, and your future.